everyone, and welcome to this episode of Power to the People. I'm your host, Corbin Snardon, and we're giving you the information that you need to empower your community. So today, we have a special guest here, Mr. Bryson Wells, entrepreneur of all sorts and jack of all trades. So thank you for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
So let's jump right into it. Give us a little bit of history about yourself, how you came to be in entrepreneurship, because obviously you're very young.
Well, I'm born and raised in Paducah. Entrepreneurship has really been second nature to me my whole life. I think the earliest I can remember, I was selling pencils that I found on the ground in second and third grade. I kept a crayon box full of pencils and erasers. I'd sell them back to my classmates for like $0.25 a piece. So
high prices.
Hey, supply and demand.
This is true. This is true.
So I always had a knack for, I guess solving problems and making money, and it's the only thing I've ever really known.
All right. So when we talk about entrepreneurship, you're very young. If you don't mind telling us how old you are right now.
20 years old.
Okay, so 20 years old, already establishing yourself as a well-seasoned entrepreneur. So you said you always used to sell stuff like pencils and things to your classmates, and now at 20 years old, what are some of the entrepreneur venues that you've gotten yourself into?
Well, my main focus is real estate. It's really it's a hot commodity. They're not making any more land. Everybody needs a house, a place to stay. So, it's a great business to get into. I'm into the service industry. Me and my sister started a taxi service for pets. Kind of a niche, kind of a novelty kind of service, but still very practical. Lots of people don't have time to get their pets where they need to be, during a busy work week. So we like to take the load off people with that service, and I also help out with the marketing of my father's detail shop. So really everywhere.
Yeah, a little bit of a jack of all trades. Let's focus on the real estate for just a moment. So at being 20 years old, you're talking about real estate development. That's something that even people 60, 70 years old don't have a grasp on. You said a comment about, they don't make more land. So why real estate development? Why get into that field for your entrepreneurship?
I mean, real estate's it's the best asset you can have. Like I said, due to inflation, values are always going up. They're not making any more land. So if you can figure out a way to get a hold of a piece of property, a piece of land, a house, a condo, anything really, you're going to see your money increase in one way or another. I really think home ownership is a gateway to not only personal and financial success, but just creating all around a better life. I think it's something that people should really focus on, is ownership of assets, specifically homes.
I would agree. Like you said, they don't make more land, and land is always going to hold its value. Whether it has a home on it or not, it's always going to be something that is worth something, and it's never going to go away. It's never going to, you're just not going to end up with less land. It's always going to stay.
Right. And
it builds wealth. It builds all kinds of generational wealth. Now, you seem very knowledgeable about real estate at 20. Who's teaching you these things? Where are you getting this knowledge from?
I'm really self-taught. I got a job with one of my friend's fathers in high school, and he's a local developer. He's from Bowling Green. He moved to Paducah, sorry. And he really helped, I guess, shape my interest in real estate. I saw what it was able to do for him and his family, and it really kind of sparked my interest in it. And then from there, I really just been studying on my own, just the best practices and techniques and things like that. So it's really a lot of just self-study and self-teaching.
Which I appreciate as an educator, obviously. Right. Looking into that and really developing those skills, I think that it is very encouraging to see somebody very young taking an interest not only in entrepreneurship, but actually seeking those avenues of knowledge. Now, you said a lot of things are self-taught. I am one of those advocates, of course, for higher ed. College is always a very, very good thing, but it's also not for everybody. And I'm like, for some people to get that entrepreneurship and be self-taught. I believe the technical term is an autodidact. So to be able to like self-teach yourself, to be able to do some of these things, I think it's actually very incredible, and it shows a lot of marksmanship for your craft. Mm-hmm. So also when talking about real estate development, you're mentioning things like, you know, the inflation and the prices and things like that. It sounds like you're doing a lot of reading the market.
Yeah, I mean, the market is just one of those things you kind of have to pay attention to, especially when dealing with assets like homes, just like you would with stocks and bonds. You know, you wouldn't want to, you know, blindly put your money somewhere and not know what's happening to it. So I think it just comes with the territory of, you know, the interest in real estate and development, things like that. You just kind of have to know what the market's doing and have the ability to somewhat predict. I mean, you can't tell the future, but you can make educated guesses.
Agree. So, you know, with the homeowning process, it's arduous. It can be complicated. It can be very complex. There's a lot of steps in between it. Mm-hmm. If you wouldn't mind, just kind of walk me through the basic process of I'm a new homeowner, or I want to purchase a home, I'm an aspiring homeowner. What are those steps? Because there are a lot of things that people miss. People think it's just as simple as, you know, as buying a car. You know, I put my money down, I make a payment, that's it. But there's a lot of other steps in between there, right?
Yeah, there's quite a few steps when it comes to purchasing a home. You know, I do want to say I'm not a banker or a broker or anything like that. So, you know, this is just with my experience. But you know, there's really three main things that you have to have when it comes to purchasing a home. You have to have a credit score, you know, a decent credit score. You know, there are products that banks offer to, you know, people that have a lower credit score. You know, 580 is generally the lowest I've seen that they would go. But you know, you want to have a decent credit score. You need to have a work history of 2 years. Generally, with self-employed, you need to be about 2 years, 6 months if you're a W-2 worker. And you have to have some sort of down payment. With FHA loans, they allow a minimum down payment of about 3 to 3.5%, all the way up to 20% if you're doing a construction type or renovation project or something like that. So there's a lot of different avenues you can go down and explore, but I think those are about the basics, you know, bare minimum.
Yeah, so you mentioned FHA. So FHA loan, help me out here.
So FHA stands for the Federal Housing Authority. It's essentially a loan for a home that's backed by the government. So that's why banks offer it such low, have such low requirements for it, is because it's backed by the government. So they don't take as much risk on their end. And it's really a great product that I think lots of people should look into taking advantage of, because you can get into a house for literally as low as 3%, you know, on a $100,000 house. That's $3,000, you know, $3,500 is not a lot of money. I mean, I would say most people can save up $3,500 to put towards, you know, gaining an asset to help better their future. So I really highly encourage people to look into things like that.
All right. So when we look at those FHA loans, or just housing loans and things in general, we've already discussed how housing and home ownership is one of the biggest bridges to wealth and the biggest bridges out of poverty, really, to be able to generate that and to keep that. If you are someone that is living in a situation of abject poverty, what would you suggest to somebody like that? You know, somebody that can't make the money necessarily. They're working, but they're trying to keep themselves afloat. They're struggling, though, to really make those ends meet for those homes that they want. What would you suggest to that person?
I would say to really take a survey of your situation. You know, make a budget if you don't already have one. You know how much money is coming in per month and where the money's going. And, you know, really just take responsibility for your finances. I think that's the first step in, you know, bootstrapping yourself out of poverty, so to say. And then I would say look for those resources that I mentioned before. FHA loan is a great resource to take advantage of. You know, just call the bank, talk to a mortgage broker, a loan officer, and you know, most people will be more than happy to help you, you know, set up a plan so you can navigate your way through something like that. But like I said, the first step I would say is to, set up your budget, find out where your money's going, and continue from there.
Good. Let's focus on some of our viewers are HGTV people. So, we've got like Flip or Flop or, Chip Gaines and Joanna Gaines.
Yeah.
Love them to death. But, not every house can take shiplap.
Right.
But in all seriousness, we're seeing a wave of people now that are purchasing properties that seem dilapidated and that have just really fallen into states of really condemnation. You can't live in them anymore. Properties that are run down. We see that Paducah just recently, within the last few years, has been really trying to dump off a lot of properties that are either very run down or in need of building and things like that. How do you, as an entrepreneur, look at those types of avenues for homeownership?
I think that is a fantastic opportunity. I'll drive through town and see an old dilapidated building, and all I can see is opportunity. Like I said, there's various loan options for people that want to get into something like that. I will say that you need to be very careful on trying to jump into a project like that, because there's always more to it than what it seems. You might rip up the floor and find out that all the plumbing needs to be replaced, and that's $5,000 to $10,000 depending on the home size. Just things like that, you can't call it. There's always something that'll happen that you weren't planning for. And so I'd say be very careful. The opportunity is definitely there. Get some consultation, get help if you don't know what you're doing, but you want to try to seize opportunity. I'd say find someone that's experienced in it and ask them for help. You can't be afraid to ask for help.
Right.
And I think it's a fantastic opportunity. Highly encourage people to take advantage of that. And I know the city would be more than grateful to people to take that chance and help build some wealth for themselves, and also help beautify the city at the same time. I think it's a win-win situation.
I can definitely agree with that. One thing that I'd like to add to that is people that are seeking to do that and kind of flip the home. One of the things that catches a lot of people is they don't understand maybe city ordinances and permit processes. Those are super important. And I encourage people to always check with the city or the county just to see what those laws are and building codes are for what you can have and what you can't have. There's nothing more frustrating, like you were saying, if somebody tears up the plumbing or tears up the floor and they have to replace all the plumbing. Nothing as frustrating equally if you build or trying to build a house and then city manager or somebody has to come through and tell you, oh well, you can't build it like this. Right. So those are just some important avenues. I want to shift gears here because you mentioned a couple of other things that you dabble in. So, real estate development is your primary, I would say.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So real estate development is there, but you also said you had a pet taxi service and a couple of other businesses that you're in. I mean, it sounds like you got your hands in a lot of pots.
Yeah, man. I try to stay busy, in various occupations. I just love the business side of things. That's just something that's always really come natural to me, something I've enjoyed. So if I can inspire and help someone with their entrepreneurial ideas and endeavors, then I'll do everything I can to help them out.
I'm big on being able to give back. So right. Thank you for that.
Yep.
In keeping with some of the things that you're doing, what dictates, I know you've got your personal interests, but what dictates what you do as an entrepreneur? I know real estate development is something that you like, but are you also, you mentioned the pets and then some detailing and things like that. Are those interests that you have, or are those just things that you wanted to do?
A little bit of both. The pet taxi service kind of came about out of pet ownership. My family has several pets. We always have, always probably will. And so we just saw a need that, it's a service that we could have taken advantage of, and we think that other people would do the same. So, and it's something that's new to Paducah. I don't think anybody's ever tried to do something like this. So we thought, why not give it a shot? And that's really just the way I look at things. I see a problem and try to create a solution for it. And not only that, it's a joint venture between me and my sister. And it really came about because we were sitting around just talking, brainstorming ideas, and she came up with it, and we were like, okay, let's go for it. Anything I can do to support, business ownership, entrepreneurship, and creating generational wealth in my family, that's a big thing for me. And, helping others do the same, so.
I think that's incredible. Now, you mentioned generational wealth. We've thrown that term around a couple of times. So I like to always tell people, there's a difference between being rich and being wealthy.
Yes.
Why is generational wealth one of your focuses?
Generational wealth to me means that I can take the stress off the next generation of my family by actively pursuing their futures now. So my goal, honestly, is to get to a point where, my nephews, my cousins, my children eventually won't have to worry about, things like paying for college, because, it's ridiculous now. It's only going to go up, putting a down payment on their first home, or getting their first home, paying for their first car, just things like that, meticulous things like that I've had to deal with in my own life. I want them to ease the burden for the next generation, and I think that's an important thing to leave behind. Think bigger than yourself.
Everybody wants to, I think, kind of take care of their family, and I love the fact that you're not just looking out for this generation, but the generations to come after. I think so many people, especially young people today, are very concerned about getting everything that they can, get rich or die trying, right. Quoting the great 50 Cent. So, everybody's trying to get the money, but they're not necessarily building those bridges to establish themselves for years and years and years to come, establishing themselves for generations to come. I think one of the more important things to look at, as an educator, I love history, a student of history, you look at your richest families in the world, they all started out broke just like everybody else. You look at your Rockefellers, your Bill Gates, your Mark Zuckerbergs, and the list goes on. They all started out just like everybody else. They were just as broke as the rest of us. But, in many ways, they were entrepreneurs, and now they've built up wealth to be able to pass on to the next generation. So I think that's great that you, at such a young age, have already kind of figured that out, that you're not trying to do it at 60, but you're doing it at 20.
Right.
So a lot of the things, it seems, with your businesses, it looks like you're really taking to heart supply and demand.
Yeah, I mean, that's the basis of our economy, really. If you have something that somebody else wants, you get to charge the price for it. I mean,
that's good business practice there to me.
Yeah.
So, do you dabble much into? You do a lot of things with business, obviously, as an entrepreneur. So let's talk about the business aspect real quick. It's cool to make that idea, and you say, okay, here's a need that I want to meet. I'm gonna create this and then charge a price for it. But when you get into the nitty-gritty of the business side of it, what else goes into that?
There's a lot more research, I think, than people realize when it comes to developing a business. Anybody can come up with an idea and say they're going to do X, Y, and Z and charge, some exuberant rate for it. But, you can do that all day long and see how many people are going to buy it. I think a really important aspect of developing a business is examining your target market, examining where you're going to do something and how much others are currently charging for it, and then see what you can do to set yourself apart from them. People can choose anybody to do anything. That's the that's the beauty of capitalism. There's so many options. So you really have to define what sets you apart from other people, and work to market that as efficiently as possible.
All right. Sounds like also there are being able to do that marketing and knowing your target audience is key. Knowing your audience is key. And also with that, how do you do things like, how do you set things like, your price points, your even your marketing? How do you target yourself around that? You mentioned your target audience, but how do you focus everything else?
Really, I take I examine the market. Like I said, I couldn't tell you how many hours I take to, really pinpoint, who I'm going to be selling to, why they would choose me over someone else, and then how I can make myself competitive to someone else. Not only in price, because that's a huge thing, but also in quality of the good itself, quality of the service. That's really some things that people often don't consider whenever they're building a product or a service.
So quality has quality control is a big word.
Yeah.
Is a big word for me. If you make a bad product, obviously it doesn't go into that. So if you could shed some light on maybe the analytics. Any business is going to look at their target audience, how much product and things that they're selling. There's a lot of other things that go into that. So even with knowing how much to sell something for. So when you're doing all of the things that you do and your research and things like that, what other analytics outside of the market are you looking for?
One of the major things I look for is competition. You have to have, it's good to be the first one to a market, but it also kind of makes your job a little bit more difficult, because then you have to, keep more tabs on yourself. You have to make sure that you keep track of things like conversion rate. You have to keep track of all your marketing, so you can run your marketing against each other and see which is more effective. So whenever there's more people in a market, they've really done the hard work for you. You can go in, you can check, what they do and what they don't do well, and compare it to what you're doing or what you're planning to do, and you're able to adjust accordingly. So I think competition is a big thing, and I'm always a fan of competition. I love competition. I think that's what makes business interesting, and I'm all for it. And hopefully, whenever you enter a market by yourself, not only does that, it signals to other people that they might be able to do the same thing. And again, it brings more competition. Eventually, that ends up benefiting the end consumer, in the form of prices and discounts and all sorts of things. So there's a lot that goes into it. But at the end of the day, it really just comes down to, trying to take full account of everything that you're trying to do and what your competitors are doing, and really just putting your best product out there, putting your best foot forward.
I like that. When we also look at that, competition is, I'm a big competitor. I think most people know that by now, that I can't stand to lose.
Right.
But, understanding your competition is very important in business. I think understanding what your target audience is, your market is, how to make that work. And there's, people, I think so many people have that great idea to say, oh, I'm going to get involved in business, I'm going to do this. And then they forget those little things and steps that kind of go in with that. When you are sitting down and doing these things, so obviously you have to plan. Mm-hmm. You have to make a business plan for this. At least I hope there's a business plan in there. Yeah. Or are you more of I had a great idea, we'll figure out the rest in between. So what's your process for creating some of these venues?
Definitely plan ahead. If you don't, nothing good can happen. You got to plan ahead. You got to sit down and really take account of all things that could possibly happen, and really, you have to really take a consideration to a lot of the variables, like I mentioned before. And if you don't, it's not going to end well. Either your marketing is going to fail or your product quality is going to suffer. There's just a lot of things that could happen if you don't solidly sit down and frame out, what you do want to do, what you don't want to do, and everything in between.
Right. When you make your business plan, what are your non-negotiables that go in there? I know you have, of course, the idea for this is the business that I want to do, mm-hmm. but what else goes into that?
I would say that quality is always number one priority. I always want to deliver a good product and a good service. Communication is definitely key when developing a business. You have to communicate effectively, between everyone, between your partners, with your customers, your employees, just everything. So a certain level of integrity comes with that as well. I want to maintain a high level of integrity. That's a core value of mine. As well as I like to keep philanthropy in mind, because I'm a big proponent of giving back to the community and giving back to, staying true to your roots and giving back to where you came from. I think that's a huge thing that people often overlook. They like to say, I've outgrown Paducah, I want to move on somewhere else, and then they get off and, they might forget about where they came from. But that's one thing that I really want to try to avoid.
I really believe that is something that Paducah in general is missing, is that need for people in general to give back. But it's super important for young adults to be able to do that, to actually have some investment in their community, and to want to be a part of that process and to want to give back. It's such a key thing. Well, with some of the remaining time that we have left, I really just want to know and pick your brain on this. So who are your entrepreneurial heroes? Somebody, you've always had the entrepreneur gig, like you've always had it in you, that's been a part of you, but I know there's some people that you probably study to see their methods.
I mean, yes and no. I study entrepreneurs and just business in general because I like the aspect of being able to create whatever you want to. That's the beauty of America. You can really do whatever you want to do, and there's really not that many limitations on it. As far as inspiration when it comes to entrepreneurs, I'm a big fan of Elon Musk. He is self-taught. Everything he learned, he taught himself how to code at a super young age. I want to say it's like 6. Don't quote me on that, but he was an immigrant, came from South Africa, and has built his company into one of the largest in the world, and definitely one of the most recognizable. And that's something I really admire and tried to replicate. Another one is Don Pepples. He's the largest African American real estate holder in the United States, and he's another, like I said, bootstrap, self-made entrepreneur. And if you haven't heard of him, I definitely recommend checking him out. He's a really inspiring dude. There's tons of entrepreneurs I could mention, but I think those are really my top 2. I really respect the self-made aspect, and to see what they accomplish from really nothing is truly inspirational.
I think so, and I think everybody should check those people out. Bryson, I want to thank you for coming on to the show today, and we definitely want to thank you, the viewers, for watching, and we want to see you next time on Power to the People. We'll catch you later.